The last of the fleet drifted through the void like broken leaves on a dead wind. Commander pressed her four-fingered hand against the cold viewport of her damaged cruiser, watching the stars blur through damaged hull plating. Behind her, the bridge crew worked in desperate silence. Warning lights painted their pale blue skin in shades of amber and red. The air recyclers groaned. The engines sputtered. Hope had become a distant memory. 3 standard rotations ago, they had been a proud civilization, their ships numbered in thousands. Their colonies stretched across 47 worlds. Their children sang songs about eternal peace and prosperity. Then the swarm arrived. Nobody knew where they came from. Some said they crawled out from between dimensions. Others believed they were a weapon created by a dead civilization, now running wild across the galaxy. What everyone knew was simple. The consumed. They did not negotiate. They did not show mercy. They stripped worlds bare of all organic matter and moved on to the next feeding ground. Watched another distress beacon wink out on her tactical display. That was the transport vessel Harmony. 12,000 civilians, families, children, gone in the time it took to draw a breath. She closed her secondary eyelids and forced herself to breathe. Around her limped the last survivors of her people. 17 ships remained from a civilization that once commanded the respect of the Galactic Council. 17 ships carrying approximately 400,000, the final seeds of their entire species, and the hunting pack was less than 2 light cycles behind them. Her communications officer, a young male named, looked up from his station with fear swimming in his large silver eyes. His voice cracked when he spoke. He told the commander that long-range sensors detected the swarm formation. They were gaining speed. At current trajectory, the enemy would intercept them within 6 standard cycles. 6 cycles, ran calculations in her mind. Their fastest ship could barely manage half the speed needed to outrun the hunters. Their weapons were nearly depleted from the desperate retreat across 3 sectors. Their shields flickered like dying candles. She turned to face her crew, 15 who had trusted her to lead them to safety. 15 faces that still held a spark of hope because they believed in her. She could not tell them what she truly felt. She could not tell them that their mathematics offered no escape, that the equations of distance and speed and enemy numbers added up to one answer: extinction. Instead, she ordered them to maintain course toward the uncharted region ahead. Perhaps they would find a hiding place. Perhaps they would lose interest. Perhaps the universe would grant them a miracle. None of them believed it, but they obeyed because the alternative was to surrender to despair, and there had never been a people who surrendered. The cycles passed like years. Engineers worked without sleep to coax more power from dying engines. Medical teams rationed the last supplies among the sick and wounded across the fleet. Parents whispered bedtime stories to frighten children, promising them that tomorrow would bring salvation. They closed the gap with mechanical precision. When the swarm reached engagement range, gathered her remaining warship commanders through flickering holographic links. Their images wavered and distorted with each power fluctuation. 7 military vessels against a hunting pack of over 200 interceptors. The math was simple. The outcome was certain. One commander, an elderly female named who had served the Navy for over 60 cycles, spoke what everyone thought. She proposed that the warships turn and engage while the civilian transports scattered. They could buy perhaps 2 cycles of time, maybe 3 if they were fortunate. Another commander disagreed. He argued that scattering would only ensure that they picked them off in smaller groups. At least together they could die as one people. Listen to them debate the manner of their extinction. She felt something cold settle in her chest, not fear, something deeper, a terrible acceptance that she had led her people to their ending. Then interrupted. His voice carried a strange quality she had never heard from him before. Confusion mixed with disbelief mixed with something that might have been wonder. He directed everyone to look at the sensor readings from the uncharted zone ahead. Turn to the main display. At first she saw nothing unusual: empty space, scattered asteroid debris, a small red dwarf star barely worth cataloging. Then the computer enhanced the image and her breath stopped in her throat. A ship emerged from behind one of the larger asteroids. No, not a ship. A vessel of such immense proportions that her tactical systems initially classified it as a small moon. Its hull stretched nearly 8 kilometers in length. Weapons arrays bristled across its surface like metallic thorns. Engine signatures burned with power output that exceeded her entire remaining fleet combined. The design was completely unknown to records. Angular where most galactic vessels curved, brutal where others displayed elegant engineering. Its hull color was dark gray, almost black, adorned with strange symbols in a language no could read. Its hologram flickered as the elderly commander demanded to know what they were looking at. The computer searched desperately through databases for any matching configuration. After several long moments, it returned a single result: a species classification barely mentioned in the oldest records of the Galactic Council. Humans. Searched her memory. She had heard the name before in passing references during diplomatic briefings. A young species from a distant arm of the galaxy. Relative newcomers to interstellar travel. The Council considered them primitive and insignificant. Their technology was crude. Their biology was fragile. There had nearly destroyed itself through internal conflicts multiple times. Nothing in those briefings prepared her for what her sensors showed now. The human vessel changed course. It moved with surprising grace for something so massive, swinging around the asteroid and accelerating toward the fleet. Ordered defensive positions, uncertain whether they faced a new threat or something else entirely. A communication signal cut through the static of failing equipment. A voice spoke in rough but understandable galactic common. The accent was strange, the pronunciation imperfect, but the words were clear. The voice identified itself as belonging to Captain of the United Earth Carrier Defiant. The voice asked if the required assistance. Hesitated. Trust had been worn thin by cycles of betrayal and abandonment. When the first attacked, they had called upon their allies in the Galactic Council. They had closed their borders. The Syndicate of 12 had offered sympathies but no ships. The great powers of the galaxy had watched the burn and done nothing. Why would these humans be different? Reported that the swarm had entered long-range sensor detection. Time was running out for deliberation. Made a decision that would echo through what remained of history. She opened a channel and told the human captain everything. Their situation, the enemy hunting them, the children aboard the civilian transports, the certainty of their destruction. She asked for nothing. She made no demands. She simply spoke the truth and waited. The human captain's response came after a brief pause. His voice carried a quality she did not immediately recognize. Later, she would learn that humans called it righteous anger. He stated simply that his ship would engage the enemy. He instructed the fleet to proceed to the coordinates he was transmitting. A human colony waited there. They would find safety among his people. His hologram sputtered as the elderly commander demanded to know why the humans would help them, what they wanted in return, what price they would pay for this intervention. Captain's answer confused them all. He said there was no price. He said that his people had sworn an oath to protect those who could not protect themselves. He said that humans had learned long ago that the universe was too dark and too cold to face alone. He said that today, they were not alone. The human warship moved past the fleet like a metal giant striding into battle, watched in stunned silence as the Defiant accelerated toward the approaching swarm. One ship against 200. The mathematics were even worse than her own impossible odds. What followed would be studied by military strategists across a dozen species for generations to come. The human vessel did not attempt to flee or hide. It did not seek tactical advantage through maneuver or deception. It simply drove straight toward the enemy and began firing. Weapons that had no names for carved burning paths through the void. Missiles by the hundreds screamed from launching bays. Defense systems created overlapping fields of destruction that turned approaching interceptors into expanding clouds of debris. The Defiant absorbed hits that would have destroyed any warship and kept advancing. Watched the battle unfold on her tactical display. The swarm, for the first time in any recorded engagement, seemed uncertain. Their formations scattered as they tried to adapt to an enemy that refused to behave like prey. The human ship tore through their center, leaving devastation in its wake. The communications channel crackled again. Captain's voice was calm despite the chaos around him. He reported significant enemy casualties. He instructed the to increase speed toward the colony coordinates. He promised that the Defiant would hold the line. Two of the warship commanders broke formation without orders. Their vessels turned and accelerated toward the engagement. When demanded to know what they were doing, one of them responded simply. He said that the humans were dying to save strangers. He said that if this was their nature, then they would stand beside them. The Defiant did not fall that day, but it came close. When the battle finally ended, only 37 vessels remained from the original hunting pack. They fled into deep space, broken and directionless, without enough numbers to maintain their swarm intelligence. The human carrier limped toward the fleet, trailing atmosphere from a dozen hull breaches. Nearly a third of its crew had perished in the engagement. Its weapons were depleted. Its engines barely functioned. But Captain still stood on his bridge, and once image appeared on his communication screen, he smiled. He welcomed the people to human space. He apologized that the accommodations at the colony might be modest. He expressed hope that they would find peace there until they could rebuild. Asked him the question that burned in her mind. She asked why. Why had he risked everything for people he had never met? Why had his crew died for strangers from distant stars? The human captain thought for a moment before answering. He spoke of Earth's history, of a species that had known terrible darkness, of wars and suffering and cruelty beyond measure, but also of something else, of a stubborn refusal to accept that darkness was all there was, of generations who chose to reach toward the light even when logic said it was pointless. He told her that humans had learned something through all their struggles, that the measure of a people was not in their power or their technology or their wealth. The measure of a people was in how they treated those who had nothing to offer in return. That strength meant nothing if it was not used to protect the weak. The survivors reached the human colony 3 rotations later. They found not just shelter but open arms, families who shared their homes, communities who shared their food, children who played with young ones without fear or prejudice. In the cycles that followed, they would rebuild. They would establish new colonies under human protection. They would eventually retake some of their lost worlds with human ships fighting beside them. The two species would forge a bond that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. But that was the future. In that moment, standing on a human world under an unfamiliar sun, Commander finally allowed herself to weep. Not tears of sorrow, tears of something she had thought lost forever. Hoping. Out of the endless dark, from a species the galaxy had dismissed as insignificant, their final chance had emerged. A warship they never expected, crewed by a people who saw strangers in need and refused to look away. They would never forget, and the humans would never stop living by the simple truth that had driven Captain into battle against impossible odds. In a universe filled with darkness, the greatest strength was choosing to be the light.